I had the privilege and pleasure of knowing Princess Diana, and an amazing woman. I don't think in my lifetime I can think of any other woman who has such international fame. And I'm delighted in one sense that we are commemorating her, because her good points far outweighed anything derogatory that some people might say.
After years of silence, the former royal head of security has finally broken his oath, and what he's revealing about Princess Diana is sending shockwaves through the monarchy. This isn't another fairy tale memory or recycled headline. It's a chilling insider account from someone who witnessed the chaos, the cover-ups, and the danger Diana truly faced. From suspicious movements to ignored warnings, the truth he's spilling is far darker than the public ever knew. Buckle up, because what really happened behind palace doors is worse than anyone could have imagined. Diana's secret loves. According to Davies, after Princess Diana separated from Prince Charles, her love life became quite eventful. He claimed she had no fewer than 20 lovers, if not more. Diana, he explained, enjoyed the excitement of romantic pursuit. She liked the feeling of being chased by men, and she also enjoyed chasing them herself, sometimes even when those men were already married. This created a tangled web of complicated relationships and whispered scandals. But even before her marriage ended, Diana had already become emotionally involved with other men, relationships that would continue to cast a shadow over her life. One of those men was Barry Monarchy, who had been assigned as her personal protection officer. Their connection grew so close that it stirred concern within royal circles. In 1986, Monarchy was abruptly removed from his duties with the royal family. Not long after that, in a twist that seemed ripped from a tragic novel, Monarchy was killed in a motorcycle accident when a car struck him. Diana never believed it was an accident. She was convinced Barry's death had been arranged, perhaps as a way to keep their relationship quiet and protect the image of the monarchy. Her suspicions fueled countless rumors and conspiracy theories. However, Davies emphasized that a thorough official investigation had later determined Monarchy's death was indeed an unfortunate accident, not a calculated murder. Despite that, Diana could never shake the feeling that someone had wanted Barry out of the picture. Then there was James Hewitt, a striking man with red hair whose name became forever linked to Diana's story. Their affair was widely reported, and it later inspired one of the most persistent and controversial rumors about the royal family, the claim that Hewitt was actually Prince Harry's biological father. The idea gained traction mainly because of Harry's own reddish hair, which looked so similar to Hewitt's. But Davies firmly dismissed this claim as completely untrue. James is definitely not Harry's father, he insisted. He explained that Diana and Hewitt had never even met when Harry was conceived. According to Davies, there was no possibility that Hewitt could have fathered the young prince. Charles is his father, he declared without hesitation. As for the so-called proof based on Harry's hair color, Davies found it ridiculous. He pointed out that red hair ran in Diana's own family. Her sister is a redhead, he reminded people, suggesting that genetics, not secret affairs, explained Harry's hair. Diana's love life, both during and after her marriage, was a source of endless fascination, gossip, and speculation. These relationships were often described as attempts to find affection and validation she felt was missing in her royal marriage. Her affairs, and the mysteries swirling around them, added to her legend and cemented her as one of the most talked-about women of her time. Whether seen as tragic, romantic, or scandalous, Diana's pursuit of love was as dramatic and unforgettable as the rest of her extraordinary life. For someone to have known and leaked this much, he must have been very close. Have they known each other before his work with her? Let's find out how their first meeting went. The warning that changed everything. It was a damp, overcast afternoon in the autumn of 1995 when Di Davies first set foot inside the vast, historic halls of Kensington Palace. The place felt almost alive, with its high ceilings and endless corridors that seemed to echo every footstep. He was there to meet the woman who was known across the globe by a single name: Diana. Davies was no newcomer to danger. Over the years, his work as a royal protection officer had taken him into the heart of tense diplomatic negotiations, through crowds of chanting protesters, and into rooms where security was tighter than a vault. He had learned to expect the unexpected, to keep his nerves steady, and to never show fear. Yet as he stood there, with his shoes gleaming like dark mirrors and his hands folded neatly behind his back, a feeling of unease crept into him, one that all his rigorous training could not quite push away. When he was finally ushered into the room, he saw her. Princess Diana was sitting gracefully in a chair, tall windows behind her letting in the gray light of the day. The air was hushed, almost reverent, as though the wall themselves were keeping her secrets safe. She was strikingly beautiful, more so than any photo could capture. But it was not her face alone that held his attention. It was her eyes. In those pale blue eyes he saw a mixture that startled him. Exhaustion so deep it seemed to weigh down her shoulders. Caution sharpened into an edge, and underneath it all, a quiet, stubborn strength. She looked at him not as a stranger, or simply a staff member, but as someone who was about to step into her complicated, storm-tossed world. "You poor man," she said in a soft voice that seemed to float in the stillness. There was no trace of royal small talk or polite welcome. Her words were both a warning and a strange kind of kindness. "Do you know what you're taking on?" In that brief moment, a chill ran down Davies's spine. He understood, even before he knew the details, that she was not exaggerating. This would not be an ordinary assignment where threats came from outside and could be handled by procedure and protocol. This was something more treacherous, a hidden maze full of shadows, where danger often came wearing a smile and truths were buried under layers of gossip, betrayal, and fear. As he met her gaze, he felt the weight of what lay ahead. He realized he wasn't just being hired to protect a high-profile royal. He was being drawn into an existence where every day would test his loyalty, his courage, and perhaps even his sanity. And though he didn't know it then, every word she had spoken was true. What awaited him was a world more tangled and perilous than he could ever have imagined, a place where even the strongest men might discover the limits of their strength. For Davies to have known so much about Diana, he must have observed many things. Let's dive into the details of Davies' discoveries about Diana. A ghost in the palace. Most people like to believe that Princess Diana's days were planned to the last minute, every hour accounted for with charity events, official visits, elegant dinners, and glamorous red carpet appearances. To the public, her life looked like a polished fairy tale, carefully choreographed and bright with purpose. But to be the one responsible for keeping her safe was to realize something far stranger. Diana moved like a shadow that slipped through hidden cracks no one else even noticed. When Davies first started as her head of security, he assumed her sudden changes of plan were just acts of defiance, little rebellions against the rules of royalty. But as time went on, he began to understand they were more than that. Her unpredictability was a delicate coded dance, part quest for freedom, part strategy for survival. Night after night, she would vanish without a trace. Sometimes she would slide behind the wheel of her car and drive alone through the empty back streets of London, headlights turned off so no one could follow. She would wrap a scarf around her head to hide her face, as if she were trying to become invisible. Other nights she disappeared across borders entirely. She would leave the country without warning, without telling her team where she was going, without even the barest outline of a plan. To the tabloids and curious onlookers, these escapes seemed like nothing more than impulsive adventures, proof that she was reckless or unstable. But Davies learned to read the hidden patterns beneath her movements. She wasn't simply trying to outrun the ever-present paparazzi. She was escaping something bigger and more suffocating: the vast machinery of the royal family itself. He found the evidence tucked away in visitor logs, names that appeared for a few weeks, then vanished again. There were discreet businessmen, high-ranking aristocrats, and mysterious figures whose histories had been carefully wiped clean. Some of them brought gifts and affection, offering her a taste of the normal love she longed for. Others came with proposals and alliances, promising her leverage she could never find within palace walls. Diana welcomed them into her world because each encounter gave her something precious, a sense that she could still choose who she was, if only for a moment. In these brief connections, she gathered pieces of the freedom she had been denied ever since she entered the royal spotlight. Even as she grew to trust Davies more than anyone else in her official life, he always knew there were parts of her she would never fully reveal. She carried secrets he could only guess at, wounds and hopes she kept locked away. His job was to shield her from obvious threats, the ones lurking in the crowds or chasing her car. But over time, he came to see that the most dangerous forces in Diana's life were not strangers at all. They waited behind the palace gates, hidden behind polite smiles and familiar faces, quietly closing in around her whenever she let her guard down. Was there any situation that suggests the presence of powerful, dangerous forces around her? Let's find out. The shadow of death. Long before Ken Worf, Trevor Rees-Jones, or even Inspector Davies stepped into Princess Diana's orbit, a chilling chapter had already been etched into her life. It was a story darker than any she would ever share in public. A story that began in 1986 with the quiet disappearance of the man she trusted above nearly all others, her former bodyguard, Barry Manakee. To the outside world, his departure seemed ordinary, almost dull. Officials insisted it was just a simple transfer, a routine reassignment to a different post. No drama, no questions. But behind palace doors, Diana sensed something sinister. Just a few weeks after he was moved away from her protection, the unthinkable happened. Barry Manakee was dead, killed in a motorcycle accident that authorities hurried to label an unfortunate twist of fate. Most people accepted the explanation without much thought, but Diana never did. Her disbelief ran deep, deeper than she dared to admit in public. She was absolutely convinced that Barry's death was no accident. Whenever she spoke of it privately, her voice would tremble and her eyes would fill with sorrow that no crown could ever conceal. She believed, with a certainty that made her physically shake, that Barry had been murdered because he knew too much, or because someone thought he was getting too close. She never dared to say this to journalists or scribble it into letters. These thoughts were too dangerous, too raw. She only confided them to a tiny circle of people she trusted with her life. Among them was Inspector Davies, who would later recall the moment Diana finally let the truth spill from her lips. He remembered every detail, her face pale, as if she'd seen a ghost she could never banish. Her hands clenched so tightly around each other that her knuckles turned white as chalk. Her voice was so soft he had to lean closer to catch every word. When she told him she believed Barry had been deliberately killed, a cold shiver crawled up his spine. In that fragile moment, Davies realized something that changed the way he saw the world around Diana. The real danger to her was not the paparazzi who stalked her every move, or the tabloids that twisted her every sentence. Those were just distractions. The true threat came from unseen powers, forces so determined to control her life and protect their secrets that they were willing to eliminate anyone who came too close to exposing them. If Barry Manakee could be erased from her world in an instant, then no one, absolutely no one, was safe. Anyone she relied on could be replaced. Anyone who cared for her could be silenced. It was a truth so dark that even Diana herself could only whisper it. And once Davies heard it, he would never unhear it. From that day on, he knew that standing beside her meant living under a shadow where loyalty was dangerous and love could be fatal. Diana's stay in the palace was suffocating, as she seemed to gain the much-desired freedom after the painful royal divorce. Let's dig into the details of Diana's love life after divorce. A reckless love or a calculated escape? After her painful split from Prince Charles, Princess Diana stopped pretending she was still bound by the suffocating rules of royal life. No longer willing to hide behind a carefully polished image, she began to live on her own terms. Her love life quickly became both a magnet for gossip and a bold statement of rebellion against the palace that had tried to control her every move. One of the men who captured her heart was Hasnat Khan, a gentle and deeply private heart surgeon. Their connection ran deep, but cultural differences and the glare of constant media attention made their love nearly impossible to sustain. She also spent time with Teddy Forstmann, a powerful billionaire whose influence could stand toe-to-toe with that of the monarchy itself. And then there were the whispers about Kevin Costner, the Hollywood actor rumored to be plotting a glamorous escape plan with her, a plan that would have whisked her away from royal scandal into the bright lights of movie stardom. Every man Diana cared for became front-page news. Every relationship fed the tabloid frenzy that surrounded her, adding new sparks to the ever-growing firestorm of royal controversy. When Diana began dating Dodi Fayed, many saw a typical fling, but insiders suspected more. Dodi's father, Mohammed Al Fayed, had long schemed to infiltrate Britain's royal circles, and Diana's sudden relationship with Dodi seemed like the perfect chance to finally gain the status he desperately craved. To those who knew her well, like Davies, the former royal security head, the relationship felt too rushed, almost suspiciously convenient. Was it genuine love blooming so quickly, or was Diana desperately clinging to any haven from the endless glare of cameras and criticism? Perhaps it was both, the raw hope of finding peace mixed with the same restlessness that had defined her final years. Despite the questions and concerns swirling around her, Diana threw herself into the affair with Dodi as she had thrown herself into everything, with a mix of courage, longing, and a need to finally feel free. On that fateful August night in Paris, as Diana and Dodi stepped into the back seat of the black Mercedes that would become the world's most infamous car, Davies was far away, powerless to intervene. He had already cautioned the palace. Without the protection of his security team, she was dangerously vulnerable. When the crash shattered that car in a Paris tunnel, it didn't just end her life in a moment of brutal tragedy. It also destroyed the fragile dream that she might finally carve out a small, hidden corner of the world where she could be safe, loved, and left alone. And it left Davies haunted forever by the same impossible question, whether he might have been able to save her if only he'd been there. Princess Diana's sudden car crash after her divorce left unanswered questions and lingering mysteries about her tragic death. Let's dive into the details of the tragic story that became of her. The burden of a silent oath. After Princess Diana died, the world was handed a neat, sorrowful story. A tragic car accident that ended the life of a beloved princess far too soon. Newspapers and palace spokespeople worked together like skilled craftsmen, piecing this version of events together as if it were a delicate jigsaw puzzle. They painted Diana as an innocent victim caught in fate's cruel hand. But behind the closed, silent doors of Buckingham Palace, Di Davies knew the real story was much messier and far more sinister. He understood that Diana's affairs weren't just careless lapses or impulsive mistakes. They were deliberate acts of rebellion, a way for her to push back against a royal machine that tried day after day to strip her of her identity and spirit. The palace didn't simply try to guide her image, they tried to crush it. They leaked damaging stories to the press. They whispered half-truths into journalists' ears, stirring up cruel rumors that grew into monstrous, lies. They used Diana's own struggles, her loneliness, her desperation for love, as weapons against her. One of the most painful examples was the scandal questioning Prince Harry's paternity. Davies knew without a shred of doubt that Harry was Charles's biological son. He had seen the proof himself. But the campaign to smear her reputation was so relentless that it didn't just target Diana. It carved invisible scars into Harry's sense of who he was. Those rumors clung to the boy as he grew up, like a shadow he could never quite escape. For years, Davies held his tongue. He kept Diana's secrets locked away out of a sense of loyalty to the monarchy, to her children, to the idea that order must be preserved at all costs. But every time he saw a new documentary repeating the same distortions, every time he read another twisted headline, the silence felt heavier. It pressed on his chest like a weight that refused to lift. Unable to bear the burden any longer, Davies sat alone in his study and wrote, "I need to make this public." He knew exposing the truth would destroy his old loyalties, but in his heart, he felt it was the only way to honor Diana, a woman whose life was not a tragic fairy tale, but a courageous fight against a system determined to break her. She was a woman whose strength and sorrow were so tightly woven together that you could never pull them apart. Even in her final hours, she was determined to show the world she was more than a crown, more than a carefully crafted image. Davies had guarded her secrets because he believed it was his duty. Now, he was sharing them because he finally saw the truth. Telling her story honestly was the last gift he could give her, and the only way to honor the trust she'd placed in him. So, what do you think about Princess Diana's love life outside the royal palace? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.